Is this on YouTube?
Right, we are live.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for attending our Corporate Services Scrutiny Review Board, 9th of March 2023. Welcome. Any apologies we've received?
We've got 3 from Councillor Pearce, Rawson and Pandy.
Thank you very much. There's no late items to be introduced. Any declarations of interest? None declared. I mean, minutes held on the meeting of the 29th of September. We take that as a true account?
Long time ago, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Right. I think we've got the presentation. Kyle, is it on our counter-terrorism priorities?
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome, Kyle, to the meeting and take it away.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen so everyone can see. Just by way of introduction, my name's Kyle Hudson. I work in Prevent, which is one strand of the counter-terrorism strategy. So I just want to provide a very high-level overview of what our counter-terrorism priorities are. And we've recently come out, we do every year, we do a counter-terrorism local profile, and based on the counter-terrorism local profile, which is usually or mainly done by the police, we have a number of priorities of issues that we need to address that have been identified, and this is sort of okay, so very briefly, I just want to provide a very high level of what preventive awareness. Prevent is one strand of the counter-terrorism strategy. The strategy is made up of 4 strands. This is just one of them strands, and the purpose of it is to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism or supporting terrorism of any form. That's the purpose of it. So, based on the counter-terrorism local priorities for 2023 in Derby and Derbyshire, so we work across. Our main priorities have been identified as AQ, Al Qaeda or ISIS-inspired terrorism. Other people will term that as Islamist-inspired terrorism. Depends on what people's preferred definition of or term they prefer to use. Extreme right-wing terrorism has been identified. Online extremism has been identified as an issue, and something called self-initiated terrorists, which is what previously we may have called lone act terrorists. Now, just to provide an overview to begin with, in terms of locally, our prevent cases are down by 8%, but if we look nationally, they're up by 30%. And also, within our local referrals, 72% of which come from the police. So moving in then to, I guess, what some of the priorities are. The first one is neurodiversity. Now, by neurodiversity being a range of different things, what we mainly see is autism, mainly coming within the region. Now, I think it's really important to stress that there's no definitive link between people with autism and radicalisation. There is no definitive link. I don't want that to be interpreted as I'm saying that. But what we are seeing is that a significant amount of people are coming to our attention who do have autism or other neurodiversity concerns. And to, I guess, put that into perspective, whilst we see an increase in referrals, we did a mapping of our cases that come to our attention. And it was in 2020 and 2021 cases. We've seen that 51% of all the cases have neurodiversity concerns, which is obviously an overrepresentation compared to the proportion of people with neurodiversity concerns in the general population. So it's just something that we're recognising as something that we perhaps need to address, and working in partnership with our other services to subsequently address that. The second one, priority that we need to address is ISIS-inspired terrorism. The threat level, the national threat level for terrorism is classed as substantial, which means an attack is highly likely. And the predominant risk comes from Al Qaeda, stroke ISIS-inspired terrorism. That's the most significant threat. I will get onto extreme right wing shortly. Now, based on our evidence that we have, it shows that intelligence shows that people are radicalised both online, but also elements in person. A lot of the online stuff, but not all of it, does come from overseas as well. So we know that there is no the internet crosses different jurisdiction boundaries, and we know that a lot of people jump on certain narratives and certain radicalising influences from abroad, as well as here in the UK itself. Moving on, then we have extreme right wing. Now, extreme right wing is said to be the fastest growing terrorist threat. Now, if we look at our counter-terrorism investigations over the last year, 37% of them relate to extreme right-wing activity. And that's an increase on the previous year. So we are seeing an increase. Now, what we are also seeing, and what we also believe to be true, is that the main threat related to extreme right-wing is not necessarily coming from prescribed groups, are those groups which are banned organisations. It's coming from individuals who might have extreme mindsets, so perhaps picking up ideas online that we may be seeing, and it mainly comes online. And it's a predominantly young age group that we're seeing as well. So as it says there, 85% of those people that we're seeing are under the age of 25. So it is a really low age group. And as I previously mentioned, a lot of the activity is online based. But there is some in-person activity as well that happens. But we see a large report of right-wing activity coming from happening online, and I guess that radicalisation as well, and that involvement of extremism coming from online means as well. So things like certain online communities, online chat groups, as an example of that. And what we see is that when the police gather all their data and their information on referrals into Prevent, we see that they're able to essentially assess what the dominant, I guess, radicalising factor, so to speak, is. And we'd identify that in 47% of the cases, it is through online means. It's the dominant factor. Online extremism, though, it is, like I said, I've said throughout the whole thing, it does cross over different boundaries. It does go from the AQ, Al Qaeda, ISIS-inspired terrorism, which is also to called mixed, unclear, unstable ideologies or extreme right wing, like I said. Now, online elements does feature heavily within counter-terrorism investigations, as well as in Prevent. And there's been a range of recent offences that people may have seen in the media that relate to Derbyshire as a whole, whereby people have been committing offence online, including downloading or distributing terrorist materials, so perhaps even attack. There's been instances of where people have tried to print 3D guns as well, for example. Now, there's a few signs of online radicalisation extremism that may indicate some concerns. One of which is persistent or secretive online behaviour, perhaps trying to hide what perhaps people are doing online. Viewing extreme websites or content, or sharing hateful views or images online. Within that, we often see things like meme culture be very common as well. And then on a more, I guess, more worrying, I guess, we also see research in weapons or explosives, and in some cases, actually trying to apply those weapons as well. And one of the final priorities is self-initiated terrorists. Now, this is what I previously mentioned as something that perhaps would have previously called lone actor terrorist or lone terrorist from that word as well. And it's typically from people acting alone. Because of that, it's difficult to identify. Now, attacks that are often of low sophistication and don't require much preparation or specialist skills. So you might see something like someone wanting to drive a van into people, as an example. Or it could be something that someone wants to take a knife and stab people. And we call them, I guess, self-initiated. I should probably say this because they're not, I might put it as alone. We say that they're alone because essentially they said that they're not in contact with other groups all the time. However, we must consider that the extent to which they're actually alone may be debated. They might be involved in chat rooms, so they might be that's I guess fueling that desire and that willingness as well. Now, some signs to look out for, again, like I categorise them into three brackets that we see. Might be around developing intent, so a fixation on a particular idea. It might be testing the legitimacy of violence and legitimacy of particular ideas. That's why I say perhaps broadcasting your intent in perhaps an online chat room, for example, to see how people respond to that. I've then put around developing capability, so identifying and sourcing different resources or developing certain skills and certain knowledge that might be quite useful for operation. But then also it's around planning and preparation, so things like reconnaissance, looking at particular places where you have and so forth. That's sort of our priorities are a very high level overview. Now, some things that we are doing to adjust those priorities, and this is not a holistic list by no means, but it's just something. First is around training and awareness, so prevent training to practitioners on all of these things, but with a lot more depth. But also training to communities as well. We also do training and awareness sessions to young people themselves, if it might be an issue that young people are increasingly getting involved in. And that, I guess, forms part of our community work and community projects. Myself deliver a lot of community-based work, but also as part of our prevent work, we fund a number of organisations who can deliver some of that work for us as well. Some of which is a better place than myself to be able to deliver that. We do a lot of work around disruptions, and that's in close partnership with the police and the police prevent team, that is. So perhaps where there is it's been identified as a concern or perhaps a radicalised influence, how do we essentially disrupt that? What can we do? What mechanisms can we put in place to disrupt activity from happening, safeguard and support people? We do a lot of partnership work in, so we have something called, it's acronym it's called the Prevent Leeds Operational Group, and that's made up of several different services, and how we essentially create an action plan. It's chaired, the group's chaired by myself. Create an action plan to address the threats that we've identified. We have another acronym, PD, that's called the Prevent Board, and that's overseen by a lot of directors and service directors involved in. They're steering the ship on the Prevent Leeds Operational Group is implementing practices. And I put you because I think as councillors and elected members, you have a vital role that you can play as well in it as people, as voices of a community and representing that community. Your support would be vital, brilliant to help us drive our work forward. And then we also do a lot of school work as well. So a colleague of mine is the Prevent Education Officer. She's responsible for supporting all the schools within Derby in implementing the Prevent Duty, which the Prevent Duty requires schools as well as others to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism. So she might go into schools and provide training to the teachers, provide inputs to the young people. If there's been a certain young person that has certain concerns around them, should then work with that person to also provide opportunities to, I guess, maximise protective factors and divert their attention. Another thing that I really want to say is something that we also do, because it underpins all of our work, is that we have something called Channel. If anyone don't know what Channel is, it's a multi-agency safeguarding support panel, whereby we have a range of different partners who sit around the table, whether that be social services, it might be people from health, be myself as the police, as the council prevent team, it will have the police prevent teams there as well. Essentially, we sit around the table, and when people who have certain concerns are brought to our attention, we'll create a bespoke and tailored support plan for that individual. Now, no two support plans look the same. There's no two concerns of people are exactly the same. We will create a bespoke and tailored support plan. It's all voluntary, it's all consensual, to essentially just reduce that risk. But that's a very high level overview of our priorities that you have.
Yeah. John?
Okay, I've got a few. Never heard of the term neurodiversity before.
Yes.
That's new to me, that is. Is there any way you can define some of what it means? I know you mentioned autism.
In terms of a definition, admittedly, I don't know what the definition is, but neurodiversity, it relates to a broad spectrum of different ways of thinking. So it will encompass learning disabilities. So autism as an example, it might have ADHD in there as an example. But in terms of the raft of neurodiversity elements, I think I couldn't tell you all of them.
It worries me a little because it's like if a doctor or psychologist class somebody as neurodiverse because of something they may have said, might be outspoken, might not. And that person's now in that category. You know, it could be. It could have creepage on it. It's something to be aware of.
No, it's definitely the people that we would guess if you have neurodiverse thinking, that would be
it's good that you picked up.
It'd be clinically kind of diagnosed, so to speak. But and it's something that we all need to start understanding better. We're increasingly seeing it, and we know that our practices have to adapt to the different people that we're working with.
And then you was on about the extreme right wing. Again, it'd be nice to know a definition of that, because as time went on, as you know, from the last 3 years during the COVID lockdown, that was extreme, what they did to us. And it's now transpiring that quite a lot of that was wrong. And so in effect, we were turning into a fascist state, if you understand that, by what we did. So really, it's definitions again of what extreme means. I'd be interested to know some examples of that. But on the positive side, really, where you've identified that it's about just under 50% are under 25. So you can catch them at school at the earlier ages, you know, to prevent them, which is what you're doing. So it's good that you've identified that nugget there of nearly 50% at the age of 25.
Yeah, definitely. We do see a lot of young people coming to our attention. And it's really important that we continue to, for want of a better phrase, catch them early, work with them early before we start more problematic behaviour might start coming out later on, where perhaps it's too late for interventions like our own, because we work in a non-criminal space, so fall in and start to enter the criminal justice process or system, then perhaps. Shake.
Thank you for that, Councillor Evans. Councillor Rice?
Just about funding. You know, you give funding out. How do you know you're giving to the right people funding?
So we do a competitive funding process. So we go out to tender, we invite bids into us. The bids then come back to us, and then we will sit down with all the providers. But I should probably tell you the process first. Essentially, we're all about a tender. We assert what we need to address and what issues.
I've been involved in this extremism for the last 20 years, 22 years, and I know a lot of funding has been wasted. Right, you know, they give you brilliant bids and everything, but the actual work you want to hit, they're not hitting that. Do you actually go back and look at what's happening?
Yeah, so we evaluate our projects. So I regularly sit down with all of our project providers. I have returns from them as well that I can go through. I make sure they're hitting all the KPIs and deliverables and outcomes that they're supposed to achieve. And regularly meet with them as well to, I guess, constructively scrutinise their decisions and the priorities and their actions that they're doing as well. But if you believe that funding is being wasted and they're not hitting the right people, I'd welcome a discussion with you.
You know, I definitely think the funding is being wasted, not being given to the right people. It's favorism. They give it to the right group, you know, your friends groups and everything, but they don't give it to the right people that really work on the grants.
Like I said, I appreciate your input, and I'll definitely can pick that up with you outside the meeting. And we're always open to new providers as well. We can perhaps offer something different. So I'm more than happy to be that with you.
So just on that, I mean, are we saying that we're reaching and hitting targets based on the funding criteria and the outcomes that are set out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got just a couple. Interesting, you brought up the statistic that 85% of the people under the age of 25. What would be interesting is that you should have these figures somewhere, is what is the breakdown of the 85% in terms of ethnicity?
Top of my head, I don't know. Honestly, not off the top of my head. We can look into that.
Yeah.
I can get it for you, so you can just outside this meeting. And it will be from the police team. I'll need to get it from. We don't collect all of the data, so when a referral goes in, it goes in via the police prevent team. So they will then start to collect and do the break of the data.
No, that's good. Good to have that, because I just feel the 85% is stereotyping maybe people, and I don't believe that's actually true. I think if we had a breakdown of the ethnicity, I think it would show a different picture.
Yeah, I got my facts wrong there. So I did say half of the under 21, 85%, it's 47%, the wrong line. Yeah, nearly half that it's online, isn't it? Yeah. Can I chip in again, John?
Yeah.
That's okay. What is the funding? And what do we get it yearly?
It's a total budget, I think, is the budget.
The total budget for projects.
Do you know? It doesn't matter.
No, I do know. I'm sure it's
a ballpark figure.
I think a ballpark figure is 200k.
Yeah, okay.
I think
so it's not a huge
figure.
budget, is it?
Yeah.
And then the other question, and it's occurred to me, but this funding, if somebody has been misplaced over the years, what safeguards do you have in place as well? I mean, if I play devil's advocate, I might put my terrorist hat on. I'm going to want funding. I'm going to use it. I'm going to find out what I need to know, and I'm going to be able to circumvent it.
Yeah.
So, do you have any safeguards in place against that?
So we always complete robust due diligence checks with the people. So
yeah,
we ask all the information. We also, as part of asking for information from them, we also, yes, you do. We offer reviews as well. So you might speak to other services. You might review them. And the Home Office as well, the funding comes from. They also then will complete checks and due diligence checks as well.
So I know I one time to be developed better than security clear. It's extensive what they did to check your app, you know, and whether they go to that level, I don't know, but it'd be a good idea if they did.
Yeah.
It would be, but that's have to be done by the MOD, something like that.
So Carl, final one from me. Can you give us one? You said that your outcomes are assessed and the targets are met. Can you give us one project that you worked on that you would say is successful?
I can, but in this environment, I don't want to. Okay. And the reason for that, I'll give the reason. Sometimes Prevent has a bad name, and as a consequence, some people don't want to be named because they feel it create reputational damage. In other instances, some people have been attacked as a consequence. So
because they've been found out.
Because they've been found, So
I was on about a generic thing, just no names, no anything.
Generalisation.
Yeah.
So you said in a general project where, so for example, I did a project.
Yeah.
As an example, that's not, I don't need to name.
Yeah.
I did a project in partnership with Derby County Community Trust, whereby we worked with schools to identify certain young people who perhaps were being radicalised and showing very problematic behaviour. We worked with people who were referred to Prevent, so that they came into the project that I did. Essentially, what we did was we created a sports-based project. We did a lot of sport, but then we did sort of 15-minute breakout, 5-minute breakouts. We did kind of games-based sort of thinking skills. So we might talk about something within that 5 minutes. Sorry. Then we did a workshop at the end, where then perhaps talk about extremism, radicalisation. I like to talk about things like cults or religious movements and stuff as a way to like draw comparisons. And then what we did was we were able to work with them, provided them access to sort of FFA coaching qualifications, like diversity and inclusion qualifications, and give them opportunity to do volunteering. And that was the whole premise, was to protective factors. It's also very important that we measured success. So we sort of had a baseline from the schools and from the individuals themselves, but then at the end of that was able to, I guess, do another assessment with them to kind of find out where we're at, but also then to speak with the schools themselves to say, have you noticed a change in behaviour, any difference?
Yeah.
And we'll do that. So we might go back to the school twice in a year or sometimes 3 times. And then we'll also then go back the following year as well to say, has this behaviour sustained, or has it just reverted back to where we was at?
What's going to be the next question?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a continuation.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's always important. I think with these things, it's always important to keep having a prolonged input if you can, because like anything, like when a doctor tells you to do something, it's all right for the first 2 weeks, but then after you might
It wanes.
yeah, so it's always important to then keep going back and assessing progress, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. That's great. Thank you very much for that. So the 85%, the figures of breakdowns that you'll have, I mean, I'm assuming, well, it is from Derby and Derbyshire.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd be more interested to have a breakdown. I think say a lot. Carl, thank you very much for that.
Yes. Say last quick one.
Yeah.
You know, like the extremism is in Derby, there was a lot of extremism in early 2000s by the Muslim, you know, Al Qaeda and Hezbollah Tahrir. What is it like now here in Derby?
It's still a problem.
Still a problem.
It's still a problem, yes. It's still a problem. That's
Well, you know, in early 2000s, we used to see everything, right? But now you don't get to see anything.
so
Is it online or what?
Yeah. So when you talk about early 2000, I guess prior to, I think it was 2008, certain groups were legal. So certain people could operate freely, essentially do what they wanted.
Yeah.
Post 2008, when certain groups get banned, how much you can't then essentially present yourself in the same way, or you become problem.
Yeah, by banning them, they've probably gone underground.
Quite possibly. But then also, I guess when you say you don't see them as much, things adapt, groups adapt, and one of the main ways that groups adapt and expand is through things like online activity. As a very big, it's got massive audience. It's a way to somewhat evade detection, somewhat. It's not necessarily as obvious as we're going to set up something in the town centre or set up something in the park or something. It's not as obvious. So yeah, we do see that some individuals, their tactics.
We used to see like late 90s, early 2000s, used to have tables. They used to give glitches out in every town, on Normanton Road, everywhere. They used to give now. Even the youngsters coming up now, you don't see them in that line sort of type. Before, in 2000, early 2000, you're seeing youngsters going towards that one. But I think what's happened is a few of them got sent down, and that's why people have moved away from them a lot. I think they moved a lot, but you're saying, you know, they're still online, but they're not as active as they were before.
It's an undercurrent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be under, but the thing is, what we see, the kids are not going towards that side now.
It's good.
You know, which we're happy about that. It's not that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, before, you know, these guys got sent down. About 6, 7 of them got sent down. After that, everything sort of went dead quiet. It's gone to get dead quiet.
Yeah, it's identifying ringleaders. Then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Kyle?
Thank
I've
you.
got him. Kyle, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're free to leave when you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. Right. Got Mike. Have we? Hello, Mike.
Hi, apologies if you were expecting me in person. I had an email with the link on it sent to me earlier, so I assumed that the meeting had moved online. So apologies if you were wanting me there in the room. Hope this is going to be okay.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah. As Long time no see. Nice to see you still around, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, well,
So-
we can move straight to your. I think you've got a presentation for us as well.
I can talk through a bit of the report, and then I've got a few slides just to share some key points as well. So the purpose of the report was to provide an update on outcomes from the process of bidding for UK City of Culture and how this is supporting regeneration and placemaking priorities in Derby. So as I'm sure you're aware, we were successful in being shortlisted down to the final 8 cities in the competition, and this was from a very late start. A lot of the other places have been preparing their bids for upwards of 2 years. We started ours, I think it was about a week after the competition was announced, so we came to that quite late. So it was great that we were able to get onto that final 8. But we didn't make it quite to the short list of 4 cities. So we didn't have to go on the one show and look disappointed like Southampton and Durham and places did when they weren't successful. The feedback from the judging panel was very positive, and they commented that they could feel the infectious pride for the city, and they could see a clear need and step change that could be delivered through achieving the title. However, the key challenge that they recognised within our bid was around our ability to kind of start delivery the moment that we were announced as the winning place. So what they kind of recommended is that we could benefit from having governance and staffing in place that could act as the lead accountable body and delivery vehicle if we had been successful in winning the title. So in relation to the bid, it's important to note that it was a citywide bid. It wasn't a city council project. It was something that we had a large number of stakeholders and partners that were involved in and supporting the ambition that was put forward. And I think, again, the judging panel picked up on that it was very much coming from the city as a whole, and that the city was behind the bid. Following our engagement in the competition, the focus has been on maintaining momentum in the ambition, and key activities that have strengthened the culture sector have been captured in the report. So the key element that we've kind of taken forward and have been working on is the establishment of Culture Derby. So in November 2022, a cabinet approved the formation of Culture Derby as a cultural partnership for the city. And this would be the key strategic driver for culture-led regeneration in the city. And it would also be the delivery vehicle should we choose to bid again for City of Culture in 2029. So picking up on that point from the judging panel. The partnership would work strategically to improve the context that culture and creative sectors operate within in the city, and help shape policy, drive innovation, lead funding bids, and develop new partnerships that bring additional resource into the city. We've recently been able to confirm a chair for Culture Derby. I'm not able to announce that today. We're going to be hopefully doing a press release and announcement on that next week. And following the chair's appointment, we will be looking to recruit a board to act as a kind of a governance body for the partnership. And once the board's in place, the idea would be that the board would form as either a charity or a community interest company, and from there would be able to attract resource to drive this agenda forward for the city. And kind of develop its own operational structure. So it would step outside of the council at that point and kind of have an independence made up of and through the board of directors, which we would want to be representational of the stakeholders in the city, but also kind of the communities and the diversity of the city as well. Building on research that supported the development of our City of Culture bid, there's a kind of an executive summary, I suppose you could look at it as, which is the Culture Derby manifesto. That has been developed, and that will set out a vision and ambition for Culture Derby, the Culture Derby partnership. So we're looking at a public launch for that being planned for later in the spring, possibly early summer now. More broadly, bidding for UK City of Culture has really helped to strengthen the sector by increasing the understanding and building partnerships around the role that culture can play in the future of the city. And that's helped to open up conversations and, as I say, build partnerships around strategic priorities. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and I've got a few slides just to talk through with some of the key things that we're working towards at this point. So if I can just share that. Okay. So is hoping you can see the presentation now. So one of the key areas that we're working around is around developing what we kind of referring to as that kind of the ecosystem that culture and creativity operates in the city. The creative industries are one of the highest growth sectors in the UK. They return a huge amount of resource to in terms of GDP for the UK, but currently Derby is underrepresented within that. We don't have a real kind of foothold in the creative industry sector. So one of the key things that we're looking to do is develop more space for production and presentation of work. So one of those projects that we're looking at is around developing studio and maker space in the city. And this has the dual value of, firstly, it will help us to retain creative graduates from the university by providing workspace for them. But we're looking to develop that workspace through the void properties that we've got in the city centre. So it will also start to develop a different economic offer within the city centre, but one that also helps to add vibrancy and bring footfall and help the city centre recovery, but also help to develop Derby as a bit of a destination as well. Couple of key projects that we're supporting are around the learning theatre model for the move to the marketplace and the work around the assembly rooms, but also working around the market hall, and again how that can be a space where creative and independent businesses can operate from, and supporting the development of potential tenants for and stall holders for the market hall when that opens. We recognise through the journey that we went on with City of Culture that there's a gap in the city around live music provision. Currently, we've got a couple of very small venues that have got around a 500 capacity, the Hairy Dog and the Venue. Shortly in 2025, we will have the Beckettwell Arena that will open. But in between that, so you've got 500 capacity venue moving up to 3,500 capacity venue. There's no provision between those. And the other issue around live music provision in the city is that at the moment it's not representative of Derby's communities, or particularly the interests of a lot of young people in the city. So we're very keen to try and showcase some of the young artists that we've got emerging in the city, particularly from the urban music scene, who are kind of getting profile nationally but aren't able to kind of perform and show what they do in their own city. So and I think that also kind of has links into some of the work that Kyle was talking about earlier in terms of supporting young people to have a voice and showcase and feel connected to the city through their own cultural interests. Means that they can put their energies into positive activities rather than into negative activities. And then another area that we're looking at is this idea of worthwhile, meanwhile. Now, there's meanwhile is the use of empty retail space in the city on a temporary basis to allow things to happen, which help to bring those spaces back into use for a short period of time. What we're looking at is how we can use those spaces so that new kind of creative businesses and maybe social enterprises as well can use those spaces for a short period of time to develop their business ideas. So to test a concept, which we can then provide them business support towards, which they hopefully can then either use to move on to, say, a space in the market hall, or to take a permanent space within other property within the city centre. So again, trying to use that as a catalyst for city centre regeneration. Another key area that we're working on is around developing a stronger sector. So I've already touched on Culture Derby. That will be a key element within this. Within our City of Culture bid, one of the key elements or the key ways that we wanted to achieve that was through this idea of build from within. Now, other cities of culture, when they've developed or delivered their programs, what they've tended to do is kind of parachute in a dream team, dream delivery team, who kind of appear in the city, do lots of great stuff and then disappear at the end of it. Our bid was very much built around the idea of developing the skills and the capacity and the expertise locally so that we could deliver our City of Culture from within. Obviously, we would bring external expertise to help kind of bolster that programme, but also so that local creatives could learn from those external partners. But that idea being that by building from within, the legacy stays in the city rather than disappearing at the end of it. And that's very much part of the way that we're thinking about Culture Derby and the role that we can play in supporting that growth of the creative ecosystem in the city so that it can play a greater role around placemaking, but also around economic regeneration. We're looking at issues around licensing and policy in the city. There's perceptions that licensing and policy can stifle creative ambition and kind of subcultures within the city, which can again appeal to a younger generation and give them that sense of belonging. But at the moment, I think there's an issue that we lose creatives out of the city, but also we lose audiences because currently, there aren't any venues in the city where you can take a young person under the age of 14 plus to live music events in the city. So if you want to get your child or your young person involved and engaged in culture, you tend to have to take them to Nottingham or Leicester to engage in that kind of activity. So we're trying to unpick what the issues are there. And actually, there's not a barrier. It's more of a perception issue with the venues and the promoters in the city. So we're looking to try and work with partners within the policy and licensing team, connect them with venues and promote music promoters to try and again make the cultural offer in the city more representative of the interests and the communities that we have in the city. We've just put a bid in for to the Shared Prosperity Fund to get some funding to support business coaching and masterclass activity for creative businesses, and that's very much around trying to support those people with ideas to be able to turn those into kind of viable business opportunities, again to support growth and so on within the city centre. And something that we've been involved in is a regional bid to a national funding campaign which was called Create Growth, and that's very much around supporting high growth businesses within the creative industries, and that means that Derby's part of it. I think it's a £1.2 million programme, which Derby is part of a consortium alongside Lincoln and Leicestershire, Lincoln, Lincolnshire as part of the beneficiary through that programme. So that's kind of part of how we think that we can operate through Culture Derby to bring new resource into the city to help achieve priorities and ambition. This idea of disruption, I think hopefully you'll have seen things like the ribbon canopy that appeared on Irongate last year, the peregrine falcons that have appeared on the side of the museum or the electric substation next to Museum of Making, and the graffiti wall on Cathedral Green. These are things that start to change the look and the feel of the city and give it more of a creative identity, but it also brings kind of vibrancy and colour into the city as well. So we're really looking at how we can use culture in different ways to help placemaking and develop local identity and local pride in the city as well. And it's also about that kind of idea of inclusivity and diversity being represented within the city centre. So some of the things that we've been working on are around that kind of ideas around street art, those installations, and looking at pop-up performances as well. But we're also looking at how we can encourage cultural takeovers within create cultural organisations in the city. So it could be that groups from Normanton or different parts of the city could be have either performances or exhibitions, but an ability to share and showcase their cultural heritage within some of our cultural institutions in the city. And then we're also exploring ideas around how we can use creativity as kind of wayfinding within the city and helping to connect different parts of the city. And I think this is my final slide. So the other element that we're working around is that kind of around people and identity. So we've got one of the challenges we've had within the city centre that I'm sure you're all aware of is that we've kind of got the issue around the ring road, and within the ring road there's limited resident population, but also we've got a limited working population. There's lots of great projects that are happening to address that. So Beckett Wellbeing a really good example, but there needs to be an incentive and reasons for people to want to kind of move into those places and to make the choice of buying a flat in one of those complexes rather than somewhere else. So again, the creative and the cultural offer and the identity and placemaking of the city centre is a really important factor in the success of those projects. It's not just about the buildings, it's about the placemaking, the livability, the experience that people can have by choosing to live in the city centre. So that's something that we're really really focused on. And to support that, we're working very closely with Visit Derby around the work that is happening through the new destination visitor economy organisation that's been developed for the city to support that so that we're working in synergy with those agendas around making Derby that kind of place that people want to come and visit and spend time in, but also locate their business to or choose to buy a property or a flat to live in. So I think that's kind of the key areas that we're working on within the next steps through Culture Derby. Just to comment on the image on this slide, this is a young man called Karam Singh, who is a breakdancer who's grew up in Normanton, and he is most likely to be, well, he's the UK #1 b-boy, but he's also a gold medal hopeful for the Olympics next year. And it's kind of understanding that we've got creativity and talent like this in the city, and it's the opportunity that we have to use that as to really celebrate those young people, but use them as kind of role models for other young people in the city to actually feel that they have the opportunity to drive and to achieve their own ambitions and goals. So I'll just stop sharing my screen there, but I just wanted to finish off by just saying that there's a lot of good stuff that's come out of the bid that we put in for City of Culture, and the partners are still engaged and still on board. But there is a real challenge within our cultural sector at the moment, particularly around cost of living crisis, increased costs around utilities bills. I think one of our cultural partners are expecting their utilities bills to go up by £100,000 this year. So there's a risk that we keep on this journey and we build this momentum, but we also need to be looking at the long-term sustainability of our cultural partners and supporting them to be that kind of foundation that we can build all of this additional expertise and ambition upon. So hopefully that's given you a sense of the next steps that we've been taking, but also the opportunity that's been created through the journey that we went on through City of Culture. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Mike. Very informative. Councillor Evans?
I don't know. I'm fine with that. It's
Fine.
very concise.
Yeah. Councillor Rice?
I'll just ask a quick question. On your committee do you have a committee or partners
Used to be the culture board, didn't it?
Sorry?
Used to be the culture board, wasn't it?
Culture board.
Yeah, so we used to have the Culture, Leisure and Tourism Board, but that was disbanded when we moved to the new kind of Derby partnership model with the vibrant and the growth and green, and the one that I can never remember. So I think we disbanded the Culture, Leisure, Tourism Board at that point. I think the idea would be that once we've got the Culture Derby partnership established, then that would be the advocate and the champion and the driver for culture within the city. So it would take the place of that board.
But question. Do you have any ethnic minority members of that board?
We haven't formed that board yet. So we've got a chair in place, and we are looking to we're looking to launch a board recruitment process in the next few weeks, hopefully. So once we announce the chair, the next step would be to launch that process. One of the things that we're looking to do is to have a kind of a deputy chair development role, and we're keen for that to be somebody with no previous board experience, and we're keen also for that, ideally for that to be a young person from the city, but also potentially somebody from a diverse background who can bring a different kind of voice into the mix, but also it helps to encourage young people to be engaged and support the agendas that we're working towards, but also it'd be kind of a development opportunity for that individual who hopefully would then be able to go on and kind of play a leadership role within their community going forward. But I think in terms of the board selection when we move forward as well, I think absolutely we really do want the board not to be the kind of the usual faces within that context. We want to attract a different kind of mix of people into that, and kind of being representational of the mix and diversity of the city is really key within that.
There's a lot of ethnic minority people with good businesses in the city as well. Yeah. And to get everybody involved in this, not just, like you just said, not just the same faces.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. I think one for me, Mike. Well, I've got a few. One for me. In Derby, we always seem to miss out. Right. And I was, for I think, was it the World Cup bid? We did the 10-minute presentation and report of bidding all. And then, the City of Culture now, we narrowly can, walk down to the last day. And I suppose what your presentation is designed is to get us over that hill. Now, I mean, take for example when Hull got the City of Culture, in comparison to what Culture Derby holds in comparison to Hull, we're miles apart. So it just seems to me that we're always nearly there, but never quite get there.
Yeah, I take your point on that. I think for me, where the opportunity lies is in the legacy activity that we've achieved through being part of that bidding process. And I think it's locally, it's kind of helped people take notice of the role and the value of culture. But I think it's also helped regionally, nationally as well to in terms of show Derby putting its head above the parapet and kind of showing that it's got ambition around culture, I think is a really positive thing. And we following the bid for City of Culture, we were successful in securing funding through the Levelling Up Fund towards the Learning Theatre, and part of there was a lot of very good work that went into that from our colleagues within the economic regeneration team and so on. But there's also the fact that we are showing ambition around bidding for something like the City of Culture helps to give confidence in the city as a place that is serious about those kind of opportunities and the kind of seeing them through longer term. I think we're in a good position to bid again for 2029. I think there's a challenge there in the fact that we are very close to Coventry, we're very close to Hull, and we're reasonably close to Bradford. And there's 2 of the nation states that have never actually been City of Culture yet since it began. So we need to make an informed choice close to the time whether we think that's something that's worth bidding for. But I think the success for me is about how we can really embed culture and use it as a driver for regeneration and placemaking in the city for the long term. And I think just to say, Coventry last week, I think the delivery organisation that Coventry had for their City of Culture went into administration last week with a debt of £1 million. So this, just because you've won the title doesn't guarantee you the long-term sustainability of culture is that driver that you hoped it would be.
Yeah. No, I'm actually being very positive about it, Mike. I think we do a lot of good work here. I mean, I think one place that we have a lack of, and Councillor Nawaz actually brought it up. We've got so many different cultures. I mean, we are truly a city, multicultural. I mean, we've got the Wasaki Festival, you've got the Eid Festival, St. Patrick's Day, you've got the Caribbean Carnival, St. George's Day, you've got Morris dancers. Organisations like Central Asian Arts and a vast of cultural activity, which I don't think is actually been utilised and been brought into that bid. Now, if we provided that whole package to truly be a cultural city, I think we would stand a lot better chance of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, within the programme that we put forward within the bid, there was a really good mix of diverse programme within there, and we worked with Circle Arts and Art Corps in terms of proposing ideas that were carried through and included within the bid. So one of the key things that we talked about in the bid was the amazing diversity that we have, the 145 nationalities, the 157 languages spoken. And that was always really part of our key ambition, was to make that far more visible within the city centre, within the programmes of the cultural organisations. And that's definitely something that we're carrying through as a legacy.
Yeah, no, that's great, Michael. Just on a final note, yeah, Karam Singh, I know him well, and he's doing exceptionally well all around. But little history tells me and his father, we used to go out competing back in the day as well. So we did a fair share of our competitive, and that's the lad gets it from his father as well. Thank you very much for that. Any more questions?
No, thank you.
Mike, thank you very much for that. Cheers.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Let's hope we're successful this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, good, wasn't it? Hello, how are we today?
Hello, very good, thank you.
Good. Over to you.
Thank you. Apologies, I'm just having some technology problems because I've been working just around the other side of this building and I've moved over here and I've lost connection. So sorry, I have just regained connection, but let me just log in just to join the meeting so I can show my slides. So,
Which one?
It's just not how we ask for it.
I probably know, but it is different. Is this something?
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll probably know him. Yeah.
Kids are doing it.
Absolutely.
We did make it to World Championships in 1980s.
It's meeting online. Up that command.
Right, apologies. I'm up and running, brilliant. So thank you for the invite along this evening. So my name is Heather Greener and I'm Director of Policy Insight and Communications here at the City Council, and take the lead for the Derby City Partnership Board. So I think Corporate Services asked for an update in terms of the Partnership Board. And I know generally we kind of give you an annual summary of activity, because I remember coming in previous years. So I suppose just to kick off, I guess in terms of where are we now, because actually the last few years, we know as a city council, the context has been really challenging. We've had we've had some quite difficult years. And actually what we did was we've seized the opportunity through our partnership working. So back in June 2020, right in the midst of, I guess, the kind of early part of COVID, what we did was we refounded the partnership board. It's for a number of reasons. The partnership board, whilst there is a lot of partnership activity going on, we didn't necessarily have that kind of leadership. So actually bringing together our senior leaders from across the public, the private, the voluntary and community sector, we didn't necessarily have that kind of platform and that kind of collaboration. So what we did in June 2020, and we did it on a virtual basis because obviously we couldn't meet, was we brought leaders together, and we particularly focused on COVID, and really both in terms of responding to the pandemic, but also dealing with the kind of the recovery. And that was, both from an economic point of view and a community point of view. So really kind of over the last 2-3 years, we kind of, as I say, kind of built on that kind of team derby that we really saw during COVID. So whether that be, the community hub that was developed in relation to Community Action Derby, whether it was, working really closely with the health service in setting up a vaccination centre. It was really incredibly, I think, powerful, that kind of, team derby engagement that we saw during COVID. And what we have wanted to do is really not lose that momentum that we built up. And you can see that in terms of the partnership board, we have got really extensive engagement from different groups in terms of that. So just in terms of some of those, my computer is not playing. There we go. In terms of some of the achievements that we've seen, actually this presentation follows really nicely from the last one, because actually, hearing Mike talk so eloquently about Culture Derby and obviously the City of Culture bid, and that was just, I think another illustration of actually where the city did come together really well, and is continuing that work, wants to build on that kind of City of Culture bid and look forward. We've seen it also quite recently in terms of, we've bid to become the host city for Great British Rail. And obviously we've been waiting for a while for an announcement that might be coming soon, who knows. But again, the collaboration that we saw across different sectors to really kind of put Derby on the map and to support that shortlisting that we got along with 5 other cities in the UK is really good. Particularly from a community safety point of view, and obviously you've had Kyle here talking again about kind of prevent and some of the other activity that we have going on from a community safety point of view. We obviously opened up the community safety hub in the city centre. So again, that was another achievement. We've also undertaken a kind of a quite extensive range of work just from an economic recovery point of view. And that was both in the short term about trying to reopen the city centre, as well as the longer term things that we've been doing around attracting investment. So you can see there, so a couple of years ago, we opened up the Derby Loves You venue, really got the kind of marketplace, buzzing, tried to support local traders. And again, that was a real partnership effort. And then obviously we've seen more kind of longer term investment through Smart Park, and also working very closely with the university in terms of support of their business school that they're developing. Obviously, Derby has a long track record of partnership working, and partnerships such as the Derby Opportunity Area, which hopefully you're aware of, is now moving into sort of the next phase of that. But again, a number of partners focusing on learning, and school improvement, and that's also led to developments in terms of Derby being awarded as the city of learning by UNESCO. So again, you know, I think some really good achievements, and we recognise that, you know, there is a lot more to do. So as we, I guess, emerged from COVID, what we did do, and Partnership Board, I think, felt quite strongly about this, was we wanted to agree some priorities that would actually inform the way that we work. So last year, I was going to say, it was March 2022, Council approved a new council plan that was based on the partnership themes. So actually, you know, really, we'd developed these themes over the previous sort of 18 months. We've undertaken a number of workshops, surveys, you know, and kind of discussion through Partnership Board to really develop these themes, and that has framed our work through the council. So hopefully you're familiar with these themes, but just to go through them. So there's resilient. So that's in terms of working with our communities to improve health, wealth and opportunities. So that really covers quite a few different aspects of our work through, for example, some of the statutory boards like health and wellbeing, community safety, but it also picks up some of the community aspects such as the Stronger Board and Children, Family and Learners. So, and also actually the sort of the integrated health boards as well. So there is you know, quite a bit of activity in the resilience, but ultimately it's about building on the strength-based approach that many partners across the city, you know, we recognised during COVID, and actually another theme was growth. So I talked about really, you know, I think the economic recovery type activity that we undertook, and I think it's just very much building on this, but overall it's about creating a modern, smart city with jobs and skills for the future. So again, there's, you know, some key elements there in terms of, so for example, I mentioned opportunity area, but you know, it's overall around attracting that investment, but also supporting, you know, local people to actually get, you know, the skills and experience and apprenticeships that they need to access some of the higher paid jobs that actually we know employees in the city. Green is a key one, so protecting and enhancing our environment. A couple of years ago, the council declared a climate change emergency and set up the Climate Change Commission. So the idea is that the Climate Change Commission very much underpins this sort of development of a green theme and, you know, considerable work towards sustainability and biodiversity. So there, you know, again, there's a whole host of things included in that. And then finally, vibrant. So kind of reimagining our city with culture at its heart. So I think that, you know, it is illustrated really nicely by Mike's presentation of culture. So it is firstly about developing our city centre, making the most of it through our city centre ambition strategy, which we consulted on over the last year, but trying to kind of, you know, bring our city to life through culture, you know, looking at, you know, different types of, you know, use within the city. So, for example, encouraging more housing and living in the city, as well as working and kind of enjoying the city. So there are 4 themes. They do set the framework for our partnership work and also the way we plan as a council. And we agreed some city outcomes. So within each of those themes, and if you look in a bit more detail in our council plan, it can we set specific actions and also, you know, measures. Actually, how will we measure success here? And as part of the performance reports that we bring forward to Cabinet and also Executive Scrutiny Board on a quarterly basis, what we do is we monitor our performance and our progress there. And I think it's, you know, it's overall reflecting that the City Council can't achieve this on its own. It is very much about how we work with partners. And, you know, that what's central to the council plan is that better together approach. So I mentioned the partnership board that we reformed in 2020. In kind of, you know, I think over the last year we've developed it further. So, for example, we invited MPs to be part of it, and a few more business leaders. as well as looking at kind of our representation across voluntary and community sector. But we had an away day back in September. We came together face to face, which was really nice. And what we did was we kind of reviewed a lot of the opportunities and challenges that we faced. Looked at particularly, some of the short, medium and long-term actions that we were taking within the themes, just talked through, and also I think just reviewed the role of the partnership board. And in particular, it's overall about making Derby the best that it can be. But I think it's understanding the role that people on the leadership board and the organisations that they represent is what they can bring to the city. So that's kind of a bit of a terms of reference for the partnership board. I think overall, over the last few years, what we have recognised is that it is quite a complex world out there, and particularly the way organisations work. And if anybody's heard Rachel North talk about this, she's also very eloquent in terms of describing the kind of chaos that actually people, our local residents sometimes experience when they're trying to deal with all of our different organisations. So what we're trying to do through the partnership board is kind of see a way through this, this complexity and actually try and, I think, focus on what's important to local people, and through our themes and through the actions that we take, we hope that we can make a difference. So, as I say, we have some agreed outcomes. We've collectively agreed we want to work towards those. And, our council plan, which obviously, we review on an annual basis through an action plan, is the key way in which we want to work towards achieving that. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we are with Partnership Board. I'm really happy to take any questions on that.
Mr. Nice?
No.
No.
Yeah. The partners shown on there, that's not all the partners, is it? Or is there others like Bombardier and, well, it's Alstom now, and all the other companies and so on? Is there other big companies in there as well as Toyota and Rolls-Royce and so on?
Yeah, we do have Alstom. So I think that they're the big three, I guess, we've got on Partnership Board. But we do have a representative from the Federation of Small Businesses as well. Yeah. We've also got Marketing Derby that obviously come and kind of represent their bondholders. So,
you still actively seek other partners from other companies?
We do. Well? Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So it's quite different think of private part and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the more that's involved.
Yeah. I mean, we also have the local, we have the chair of one of the bids attend. And for example, I think we've got Geldard. So, I think that there are a number of companies. I was going to say I'd be happy to share the kind of full list of partners that we have. Yeah. I think it's also worth saying that, in addition to partners we've got, from public, private, voluntary, community sector, we do also have group leaders. So there's representation across, from the council as well.
So, yep. You touched on the green space and thing, and the climate change, which we signed up to a few years ago, and sustainability. There is quite a lot of evidence that goes against that now. Carbon dioxide, it's suppressed, globally it's suppressed. I'm not saying I believe it all. I tend to be sceptic with everything that's presented to me, whether it be COVID or anything else. And in relation to that, and it's saying you've got target priorities mentioned. Would the priority be sustainability and climate change over, for instance, the well-being of the people in Derby, or not?
I think it's
because to me, I think we're here to represent people first. That's all I'm saying. And everything else is secondary to me.
I think it's a good question. I mean, there are a number of outcomes. I mean, actually, if I go back to the green outcomes, you can see that, what we're aiming to do is cleaner air and a reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, sustainable waste and transport, enhancing our green and blue spaces. So I would argue that those are not inconsistent with health and well-being across the council. And really what the themes are designed to do are to try and, make the links and the interdependencies between the priorities You know, because whilst we've got them in neat boxes, they don't really fit in neat boxes.
No,
you know, and so inevitably with any decision that's taken by ourselves or by partners, there's implications, isn't there? And I think it's just about working through those in a pragmatic way, and considering what's the best for the city.
On relation to the clean air, I did put a motion in and withdrew it. Going again, we really wanted to look at monitoring the air more closely across the city of Derby, and have live data available to the residents of Derby, so that I can look live. I can download it into my Excel spreadsheet. I can analyse it, so I know what's happening myself across the city. And really, we wanted to get that in place before the incinerator potentially reopens, because the CO2 emissions, with the dioxins and everything else, once that reopens, it might pale the traffic and the CO2 from what we've got at present into insignificance. So it'll give us a base there to start with. But that, I'm digressing, sorry. Yeah, and then you also mentioned about housing in the city as well. Yeah. Now, my only concern with that is for being well and living well, you know, a small garden's good. A small space to live with a garden. You know, I know some of us have vegetable plots and things, but city living, it does remove a lot of that, doesn't it? I don't know if you've looked at it from that aspect, and have got any solutions in relation to that. I
mean, obviously, I think it's part of the council's, you know, overall approach to the city centre, but also its wider housing strategy, because, you know, ultimately it's you know, we're not just pursuing city living options. You know, there are much broader options, you know, beyond that. And so, you know, I guess it's about choice, isn't it? And it's about affordability. You know, there's a number of different factors that kind of come into that. You know, not everybody wants to live. You know, not everybody wants to live in a place that has a garden, to be fair. So it's kind of, you know, but ultimately, you know, most town and city centres are reviewing that, you know, that their kind of use, and you know, the idea about having more people living in a town or city centre is encouraged, I think, because it is about making, you know, them busier, more vibrant places, you know, where actually often facilities can be much handier, you know, improve, you know, good access to transport, all that sort of stuff. So I suppose it's just, again, reviewing it in. We
do have a lot of dead space now in the city, office space with shops and so on. It's been empty for years, and something needs to do. It's positive. Yeah, I mean, it works in places like London an awful lot. So, and it's not far to walk, is it, from the city centre to go to green spaces, Barley Park and so on? Not far.
No, that's very true. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, just a couple from me. I think it's truly good to recognise that what challenging years we've had, and you know what, I hold my hat up to Derby for rising to what we've been through, and especially all the other sort of teams within the council and partners that have stepped up. I mean, everybody got stuck in and they worked hard to keep the city going. I think it's just so important to recognise that first, and also we've got challenging times ahead as well, and we can't get away from that. I think it's, you know, you've got to be realistic of where we are and what, regardless of what's happened, where we're headed. So I think we've got challenging years ahead of us. But I really do welcome the city centre living bit. I mentioned this some time ago. We have a you know, declining retail industry where shops and everywhere are open, are closing down. A lot of levelling of money that we're getting should see that sort of you know, those developments to come in here. And you're quite right. For a city centre to be vibrant, it needs people. It needs people to live in here, and hopefully, I think the university's life is coming to an end. We're on about a 10-year programme or something, and perhaps you know, that's something into the centre at some point. But it's difficult. It's difficult to scrutinise what we've been through and where we're heading, and so that's why I think it's important to recognise, you know, all the hard work that's gone into it. You know, from the officers, the councillors and everybody else that's been involved. You know, we've seen people running around doing their bit, and it's really, you know, supporting of that. And yes, we do live in a really complex world. We're not going to please everybody, we know that. But I think, hopefully, but it seems to me your presentation is bringing out, if we can untangle some of the tangles of the wires that we see in there, and the partnership board can work, you know, in the direction it's looking at, I think we could achieve a lot further. There is no criticism there. I just say well done to what's positive that's happening, more than scrutinising and criticising.
Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, thank you for those comments. I mean, I think one example actually that I didn't bring out is the work that we've done recently on cost of living, because actually, you know, I think we really do recognise that there are significant challenges, you know, facing the city and beyond, and certainly that really came out of the Partnership Board Away Day in September. But actually, the approach we've taken around cost of living, we've really tried to, well, I mean, everybody's worked together. We've worked together particularly with Community Action Derby Homes, you know, and broader partners. But the offer that now exists, you know, in terms of our warm welcome hubs, you know, the cost of living campaign that we have, the, you know, support that's available, not just through website, but through, you know, I think kind of more paper-based materials, just for, you know, because we appreciate that, you know, not everybody is able to log on to a website. You know, but with that, we really have tried to kind of, I think, simplify it for local residents in a way that is quite accessible. So I do think that, you know, the partnership is bringing benefits and helping us, I guess, try and mitigate some of those challenges. I mean, ultimately, we know we've still got some quite long-standing inequalities in the city, and another area where, again, you know, I think there's, you know, some real partnership activity taking place is the Poverty Commission. Yes. Again, it's about understanding the longer term, you know, kind of causes of poverty. You know, how do we encourage social mobility? You know, because actually, you know, there's so much work that we can do collaboratively, but it's about where do we focus our efforts. And, you know, in the days where actually resources are quite short, you know, we need to be smart about the way that we do that. We need to learn. And I do think the Poverty Commission is, again, just another example of hopefully where we can build on that.
I think Councillor Evans said it quite rightly. It's about people, and I think, you know, we're not on the planet long enough, but we're going to improve people's quality of life. I'm all for that. Okay, thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Well,
it's probably slightly digressing, but going back to the city living again and all these empty offices and shops and things. I don't know what the council's doing to stimulate occupying them, whether it can offer rate rebates and change of use quite easily, you know, allowing them some relaxations on, you know, if they refurb them, how far they've got to go, to try and encourage private landlords and people who own these properties to try and, let's get them back in use. Yeah. Let's get all this property back in use. You know, we do have some lovely old properties as well, don't we? We do.
We do. And I must admit, I'm not
efficient, I know.
Yeah.
I think the problem we have there, we have a lot of private landlords, and
but they need to be stimulated.
They would be keen to. I mean, they are doing a lot. I know a lot of people that are in businesses in that sense, because they still have to pay the rates if the property is empty, and you know they're encouraging people. But unfortunately, you know, you see it all over. Trading is difficult at present time.
Oh, yes.
Because of the cost of living and the fuel and energy and so on. So I think everybody's trying a bit without losing everything. And at the moment, I think people are struggling and businesses are struggling.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm sure moving ahead, things will get brighter. Okay. Thank you very much for that. That's much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. Work programme and topic review.
Just one thing, we have deferred the other items.
Oh, sorry, yes. Yeah, we deferred the Inside Ledger Council one for the next meeting. We've got a full next meeting. We're going to be doing that one there.
Thank you very much for
yeah, thank you. Okay, so work programme and topic review. I think we can put an end to the work programme, can't we? That'll fall into the next.
Well, basically, you've got, if you look at Appendix 1,
Yeah.
That is the work programme as it is.
Yeah.
Obviously deferred the insight-led council tonight.
Yeah.
Got the list at the bottom of items we've not managed to cover, which we can put toward to the next board, and it's up to them whether they take them on board or not. And just to note that there was, in respect to the topic review, members of the board were invited to the Communities Board in January to hear the presentation on the cost of living, and we've attached the slides for information. But you need to confirm tonight that that work concludes the work of the topic review.
Yeah, I attended the communities board. It was a good presentation. I think it's important to say that, again, a lot of good things are going on, and if it's okay with members, I'd like to say that's concluded that work.
Sure.
Because it's, again, working in partnership with everybody else, been able to deliver that. Is that okay?
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay, Karen?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that, everybody, for attending, and have enjoy the rest of the evening.